So this video is going to be about section 1.1 in Algebra 1. The first part, we're just doing some practice with the calculator, learning some different operations. So if you'll notice the first set, these first four questions here are just addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I'm pretty sure that most of you have done this before. So maybe what you should do is just kind of pause the video, try those four, write down your answer, and then we'll compare answers. Okay, so hopefully you've tried those four problems and compare the answers. The one thing that I will point out is on the division problem, when we did the 982 divided by 23, notice over here on the calculator, the very last one, you're going to get the 42 with the big long decimal. In this class, we will always round to the third decimal place. In other words, the third number after the decimal. So in this case, you've got 0.6956. So that last 6 is going to cause the 5 to round up to a 6. And so that's why I wrote 0.696. Okay, so now let's talk about using a negative sign. Notice on this first example, that sign out in front of the 243 is a negative sign, but the one in the middle here is a minus sign. And really, we just know this from the context of the problem. If it's between two numbers like this, it's going to be a minus. If it's out in front of just one of the numbers, it's going to be a negative. So when you type that in, you need to use this negative sign that's down here next to the enter. So if I press negative and then type in my 243, and then the one in the middle is a minus, so I'm going to use the minus sign over here on the right, and then the 59, and that's going to give me an answer of negative 302. So negative 302. On the next example, I'm going to have to put a negative in front of the 89. So use the negative key down at the bottom, negative 89, and then I have times 98. So times 98, and that's going to give us an answer of negative 8722. Negative 8722. If you use a minus sign where you should use a negative, you're going to get an error. Let me show you, for example, on that number 2, if I had typed in, let's say, 98 times, and then I was doing the negative 89, but let's say I accidentally pressed the minus instead of a negative on the 89, and then I press enter, and it's going to give me an error. One thing that's handy about errors is notice down here in number 2 it says go to. So if I move the cursor down to the go to, if I press enter, it's going to go to the error, and notice the cursor is flashing on that minus sign, so that's a little hint that maybe you used a minus instead of a negative. So if I change that to a negative, and notice it's a little bit smaller, and then if I press enter, it's going to work. Okay, so how do we do fractions on the calculator? In order to do fractions, you would press, there's two different ways. You can either press alpha y equals, and then choose number 1. N over D means numerator over denominator. That works. Or, excuse me, I'm going to clear that out. You can just press alpha and then the key right next to it, the xt theta. If you just press that, that'll pop up a fraction. So either one works. And now I can just type in the 12 on the top and then use your arrows to move the cursor down to the bottom. So move your down arrow. And then I want another fraction. So I can say alpha and then that x key. Whoops, sorry, I didn't want it there. Sorry about that. I'm going to delete that. So the denominator, I forgot to put my 41 in. 41. Now I need to move my cursor out to the right, so press the right arrow. Now I can type in my minus sign. Now I need another fraction, so I can do my alpha and then that x key, and then 21 over 22. So 21, use your down arrow to move the cursor down and type in 22, and then press enter to get the answer. Notice it gives you the answer as a fraction, so make sure you give your answer as a fraction. So negative 597 over 902. Negative 597 over 902. Okay, on the next one, I want one big fraction, so I'll say alpha, and this time just for something different. Remember, another way to get fraction is to press the y equals and choose number 1, n over d, numerator over denominator. So on top, I want negative 43 plus 91. So make sure you use the negative key. 43 plus 91. Move the cursor to the bottom. And down here, we want a negative 82 and then a minus sign 9. Enter for your equal sign. So we're going to get negative 48 over 91. Negative 48 over 91. Okay. For exponents, so if you just want a squared, you can just use the x squared key, which is right down here on the left above the log key. But for any other exponents, like for a 3, an exponent of 3, you can use this little caret, and that little caret is found on the far right, right above the division sign. So if I want 29 cubed, or 29 to the third, I could type in 29, use a little caret, and it'll pop an exponent box up there. And then in this case, I want it to be a 3. So enter, and I get, let's see, 24,389. 24,389. And then for this next one, don't put in any extra parentheses that aren't in the problem. So I'm just going to type this exactly the way I see it. That's going to be a negative 18. So negative 18, and I want that squared. So again, if you want, you can use this squared key here. So squared, and then plus 381 plus 381, and that gives me 57. Okay. Then the square root symbol. The square root it's the second key with the x squared key. See the little blue square root symbol? So I'm going to do second x squared. That gives me the square root. In this case, 576. And remember, when you do square roots, they don't always come out evenly. In this case, it did. So we'll just say that's 24. Notice on the next example, I've got a square root over there at the end. So I'm going to type it in exactly the way I see it. So 72 squared minus 15 to the third. So use a little caret and the 3. And notice that right now my cursor is still up in the exponent, so make sure you press the right arrow to move it down so you can type your plus sign. And then I want 3 square root of 105, so 3. So to get square root, I'm going to do second x squared, and then inside the square root I want 105. Press enter. So remember, decimals, we round to the third, so that 0 is going to round up to a 1. So 1839.741. 1839.741. Okay, and then our last example, so with parentheses, you can see the parentheses are right there above the 8 and 9, and you just type them in wherever you see in the problem. So in this case, I want 129 minus, and then parenthesis 38 plus 92, 38 plus 92, close parenthesis, and I'm going to get negative 1. Okay, so maybe what you should do is go ahead and try these 4 problems here. Just try those and maybe give it a pause, and then compare answers just to make sure you've got it. All right, so if you compare answers, I've left them up there on my calculator screen, so like if we disagree, you can kind of see what it looks like on mine. I can tell you this, some of the common mistakes I see is, like for example, on the first one, let me put my cursor up there so you can see it. On the first one, when you have the 5 to the 4th, make sure you come out of the exponent to finish the problem with your minus and your 32 and so on. That's one thing I tend to see. On the square root, when you do the square root of 10, whenever you go to do your plus sign, make sure you have moved your cursor out of the square root so that that plus sign is not under that first square root. And we haven't really talked about how to do a cube root, like down here on that number 4. Remember how we needed the cube root of 100? So let me show you how to get that. Square root, remember we said, is the second and then the x squared, but to do a cube root, you have to use the math key. So if I were to press math, which is right here below alpha, and do you see that number 4 is cube root? Notice number 5, it says x root. So like if you wanted a 4th root or a 5th root or a 6th root, you would choose that x root. You can put in whatever root you want. So I'm going to go ahead and choose number 4 for cube root, and then it'll just pop up there with a cube root, and then you can type in this case, you can type in that negative 100 or whatever you want to go in the cube root. Okay, so let's see, that covers fractions. The practice that right here, I think that's the same as what might be in the homework. I'm not sure, just as far as what you're practicing for your calculator part. So that would be it for section 1.1 on the calculator.